Welcome back to another episode of Beyond Reps. In today's episode, we're going to cover Sesh safety and how to protect your sessions from the Sesh. So, first of all, though, Charlie, how are you?
I am fantastic. I am 11 weeks into photo shoot prep. Got 7 weeks left, so it's now getting to the point where it's time to start digging. It's actually getting harder now, which is I say it's nice because the first few weeks have been very easy. I say the first few weeks, the first 10 weeks have been pretty easy. So yeah, now it's becoming a bit of a challenge. Hunger's creeping in, irritability is increasing, which is all expected. So it's not really an issue. It's just actually trying to control it so it doesn't become a bigger issue. But aside from that, life is good. Nothing too crazy going on that I can't handle. We do obviously have an event coming up, which we're going to discuss, but we will get onto that shortly. How are you? How's life? You've got some digestion issues currently, haven't you?
Yeah, so second week of the calorie deficit, and we've been hit by some sort of stomach bug, and last 3 days have been pretty much wiped out from a stool point of view, if you will. If we'll go there, we'll discuss the real topics that people really want to hear about, and just nothing solid there for about 3 days. Really, really poor. So that's probably has affected my definitely my calorie deficit. I've definitely felt like I haven't really wanted to eat cleanly, particularly. I've done okay with body weight. Like, I think I was 92.6, which I can't remember what I was a week ago, to be honest. But I feel like I'm about 300 grams down or so. So that initial big swing of like a kilo's gone. So now we're settling down to like what is more my true weight, which isn't just the additional fluid through food being stored in my digestive system. This is kind of like more accurate. So yeah, that's been a bit of a challenge to me, but I can confirm, thank God, that today, within like 20 minutes ago, the first stool has passed. It's been solid. So yeah, I know that was what was on everyone's lips. So yeah, really pleased to announce that on the pod. But yeah, aside from that, we obviously do have an event coming up tomorrow. So we will be going to drum sheds. Really, really looking forward to that. It is going to be the first event of the year, I think. I'm pretty sure it's the first event of the year for us. So that should
Yeah.
be absolutely awesome. And obviously we're going to go into detail in this pod about how we're going to break that down. But yeah, Charlie, you looking forward to the event?
I am. It's always a good time out with the crew. Obviously, we just got back from skiing a couple of weeks ago, so yeah, nice to set everyone up well for the event season. And yeah, we've definitely got a few more events lined up, but this is the first one. Obviously, Drum Sheds. It's a relatively new venue, so it'll be interesting to see what it's all about, see how big it actually is, but then also just have a good time, sesh safely. And try not to ruin the deficit too much. That's one thing I've discussed with my coach is just like not fucking things up because that's what I've done in the past. I've just gone from like one extreme to the other. So just making better decisions where I can, which again we will cover on this pod. But yeah, in terms of scale weight, it's quite interesting you mentioned about that initial drop. I'm consistently dropping now, like I'm 11.5 kilos down as of this morning, and it just seems to be falling off at the minute. So yeah, definitely riding that train, and hopefully I don't catch whatever bug you've got because I've gone 11 weeks without an illness, and I would like to go the remainder of the 7 weeks without an illness as well. So yeah, looking forward to the event, but definitely cautious of not fucking up the photo shoot prep.
Yeah, just got to be really careful when you're approaching these things. And fortunately, yeah, we'll run through some topics today. But I just like to highlight to the listeners, it sounds like we've got an absolutely colourful social life. These are probably the only 2 weeks where we've got stuff going on. Normally, weekends are just chilling, maybe go for a walk with the missus, or very basic stuff. Yes, we've been skiing. Yes, now we're going to a rave effectively. But that's basically the calendar done now until maybe the end of April. So yeah, we're not they're not the massive socialites. We're both probably fairly introverted. So these are big events for us. We've got to take that into consideration.
Yeah, exactly. And
Okay, so
it just
go on, mate.
oh sorry mate, it just so happens that they have come on like the bounce. Obviously March is what skiing was 2 weeks ago now, and it's now the Easter weekend. So yeah, it would just be a shame to not make the most of the long weekend. Obviously, I'm in a position where I'll probably still be doing some work over the weekend at some point. But yeah, we can enjoy ourselves, we can relax, and then have some wholesome weekends going into April, and then see where the rest of spring and summer goes.
Always good to link up with the team. That's the number one. And yeah, you got to make use of the bank holiday weekends. Okay, so in terms of then the topics, so as I said at the start, so the title is Sesh Safety: How to Protect Your Sessions, as in gym sessions, from the sesh. So what we wanted to break it down, obviously, it's very relevant for us right now because we've got an event coming up this weekend. So we wanted to break it down in terms of the pre, in terms of how you approach an event, how do you plan for that, the during, so what to do during the event, whether it's like 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, maybe a holiday. So we'd also class that as an event, and then post-event as well. So then what it looks like to kind of come back to training, with the idea to provide some value from our experiences that we've had, for you guys. Then basically take that away, and then hopefully you can protect your sessions, i.e. your performance in the gym, from these events to make sure that you're still achieving the physique that you want to achieve while balancing out the social events as well. So,
Yeah,
in
it's
terms
always a
of then,
challenge.
oh, go on, mate.
I was just going to say it's always a challenge balancing events anyway, just from a life perspective. So if you do have goals in mind, then yeah, it can be more of a challenge, but there's definitely things that you can do to make it easier. So yeah, we're just going to give our 2 cents on it, see what we've done in the past, see what we're doing now, and then hopefully you get some value from that.
Absolutely. So the big thing that I want to sort of start this off with is making sure that we reverse engineer back from the event. So, for example, if you've got an event coming up, so in the let your coach or make sure you put it into your planning as soon as possible. So the longer or the more awareness we have of that event upcoming, the more that we can plan effectively for that. So, for example, with clients who have come to me and they've said they've got a holiday coming up, what we will do prior to that holiday is we'll plan that. We'll plan in a deload week for that week, and then prior to that, we'll make sure that we're really progressing up intensity and volume in the gym. So the idea is then they'll be in a slightly overreaching state, and then where they're maybe doing an extra set here and there above their training plan, and they're really trying to push their performance up, and then their body's going to be absolutely caving for recovery. So when they then go on that holiday, they can then relax, enjoy themselves. Their body can then physiologically recover as well as they can psychologically recover, and get themselves nice and prepared, and then go in for the following sessions after that. So what I would say is that when you're reverse engineering it, you just need to be, you need to consider the length of the event, and then you need to consider what outcome you're kind of aiming for after the event. So, for example, this week, what I'm doing right now, so in my program, it is a 5 day program. So typically it would run Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off, Friday, Saturday sessions. So how I'm organising it for this event, which is on a Friday night, so I'm getting all my sessions in Monday to Friday. So basically I've got to do 5 days straight, taking out the rest day in the middle there, and then I will take Saturday, Sunday off to rest, and then I will get straight back to sessions from Monday, follow back my training program. So it's really important that we still prioritize getting all the sessions in as we can prior to actually doing the event.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that leads us on to the next point of whether it's planned or unplanned. Realistically, a lot of your social events aren't unplanned. It's very rare that you're going to be that social that on the day of an event, you're going to have someone reach out and be like, oh, yeah, let's go to this thing. It does happen, but if it's an event like we've got coming up, or if it's a holiday or something, it's coming up. So you can rearrange your training week around that. And you can actually factor in, like Jason said, he does with his clients. And it's just a case of actually making your training work around that window. Same as Jason, I've got 4 sessions. So I've done mine Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I can have Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, back to it from Monday. So it's relatively straightforward. You just have to actually make a conscious choice to do that thing and just reverse engineering it. So you've got the date of the event, and then what can you do from that point, rather than thinking like you get to the event and you just lose all composure. That's where it becomes a problem, and then you think you've lost all control, but you just have to take some responsibility of your decisions. And if you've got a coach, it's made a lot easier. Like for this event, I communicated it with my coach. We're around the point of refeeds in the photo shoot prep anyway, so he was like, take this as a bit of a refeed. You don't need to do anything wild. There is things that you can do if you're not in prep like I am, but you don't have to do anything wild. Just be aware of your choices. Try not to fuck it up. And if you do go over calories a little bit, which might happen, it might not, it can just be that first initial refood that we've discussed.
Okay, so what I would say as well is we need to consider calories. So in pre-event as well. So for example, if the event that you're going to be going to is an event where you're going to be consuming an excessive amount of calories, then earlier in the week, cut those calories back a little bit. So say for example, you're on about 2,500 calories per day. Maybe you're in like a lean bulk phase. I'd bring that back down to like 2,000, maybe 1,800, or maybe the 5 days prior to the event. And then on the day of the event, if it's on a Saturday, you can then push those calories up slightly. So say if your target would have been 2,500, you can push that back up to like 3,000, maybe 3,000 on the Saturday, 3,000 on the Sunday, and therefore over the course of the week, you will then still consume the exact amount of calories which you need to consume on average. So therefore, in terms of your body weight, it should have the same effect that you're after already. So that's one way that you can approach your nutrition. Another thing that you need to really consider is making sure that you get your protein in earlier on in the day. So, for example, if your event is in the evening and you're concerned that you're maybe not going to have an opportunity to consume enough protein, maybe there's not going to be enough protein available to you, then make sure that you're going to get enough protein in early on the meal. So, if you have like bacon medallions for breakfast, maybe some egg whites, that's going to be really high in protein. Maybe you get a nice luncheon, maybe like a chicken salad, something like that, and therefore you're going to be pretty close to your total daily protein intake prior to that event. And then when you go to the event, if you go to like a restaurant or even like a dance event or something, there's minimal food there. If there is food, it's normally like pizzas or something like that, which obviously is going to be high in calories, not necessarily high in protein. So therefore you know that you've banked your protein in earlier on. So really it's about just approaching it in a much more conscientious way when it comes to planning out your nutrition as well.
Yeah, 100%. And just because that means get your protein in early on, that doesn't mean you can't then make better choices while you're there. It's just you're covering your own back. So with this event that we're going to, I know that earlier on I'm going to have a breakfast just so that I've had some food in me beforehand, but then I'm also going to take like a protein shake with me so that I can have protein covered, knowing that there is going to be some alcohol consumed, potentially poorer food choices, but then still making those better decisions. And this kind of brings me on to the next point of like making compromises before you go to the event. Whether that's a holiday, whether that's just a 1 day thing, you need to decide whether you're just choosing one or the other or both. If you're choosing both, then you kind of have to limit both, because if you're having all the food that you want and you're consuming alcohol, that then becomes a challenge, because it then consuming more alcohol limits your decision making abilities. So then your ability to choose better food options is going to be impaired. Whereas if you're just deciding that you're going to have the food that you want, then don't drink alcohol. Just go for soft drinks. Or if you're going to be consuming alcohol, wine, whatever that is, then make better decisions with food. And how you can do this is look at the menu in advance. So if you know it's somewhere where it's going to have something that's relatively high calorie, then you know, okay, maybe hold off on the alcohol. But if you look at the menu, it's got a lot of options that are more suited to your goals. Like, I don't know, chicken Caesar salad, for example, dressing on the side. It's relatively straightforward to consume. Those options are going to be better for you if you're more leaning towards alcohol. So, you know, you just have to choose those better options. Obviously, we can't tell you what to choose. If you've got a coach, you could send them a menu. It's what I get my clients to do. But it's all comes down to what you want to actually do and just making those compromises. Because realistically, you can have, there is a saying here, you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. So you could have like a burger and chips and some wine, but you can't have all of that. So you're probably going to be better off making some compromises, either having a smaller portion, choosing something else that's similar, maybe like, I don't know, a burger with a salad instead, just so that you are making that compromise wherever you can. Obviously, it's very individual and it's a very broad topic, but it's just easier to decide beforehand rather than waiting till you get there and then just losing all composure and consuming and drinking everything.
Yeah, I guess in summary with that section, I'd say, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. I think that's what it comes down to, really, and
Yeah.
that's the approach that you need to take. So, yeah, the more conscientious you are with your training in the build up to that, with your diet, then the more effective you will be during that period. So therefore, you'll have less chance of falling off the horse, and therefore, you'll be in a better place coming the other side of it. I'd say moving on to during the event. So, there's things that we can do here to help mitigate the impact of the event on your training. So I think really it depends on the duration of the event, and what your coach has advised you or what you want to take away from it. So for example, if you do want to take a deload, then and you're due a deload in your training program because you've been training consistently for maybe 12, 14, 16 weeks, and you've really been ramping up intensity and progressively overloading, and you've seen the signs that you need to take a deload, then my suggestion would be, rather than taking a complete week off the gym, which is also fine, but I'd say a better suggestion would be to drop the volume in your sessions by 50%. So what that would look like is, if rather than doing one session, or rather than doing two sessions, oh sorry, two sets, do one set, or if you're going to do three sets, maybe just do one set, but just maintain that high level of intensity. This is if you can obviously train while you're doing the event, so if you're away on holiday. And then this way you'll maintain like the skill on performing that exercise in the form. So I've certainly found that where I haven't trained when I've been away because I haven't had the opportunity to, when I've come back, there's definitely been a week, maybe a week and a half or so when I'm trying to get back into my sessions where it just feels like I'm a little bit less coordinated than I was when performing the exercises previous to the event. So that's something that we definitely need to take into consideration. An example of this which has worked well for myself would be during 2022 when I went to Ibiza. So I was on prep during the time that I went to Ibiza, which is a definite no-go if you're some IFBB pro. But obviously, I was just a first timer and wanted to manage my social life as well. And we still, had a good result, winning a show, and get a place in in another show. So what worked well for me is, prior to going on holiday, I had already sussed out where the gym would be. So the gym was like a 20-minute walk or so away from the hotel. So I then went to that gym and basically followed my own training program, but just shortened the length of the sessions by taking away some sets. And that way I still got some sessions in there. So it wasn't like a complete full deload week where there's no stimulus whatsoever, but it still allowed me to have a short session so I could focus on socializing, spending time with friends, enjoying the island. Which was absolutely fantastic and worked really, really well. And then it meant that when I came back, and this was towards the tail end of prep as well, so this was when I was probably about a month, maybe 6 weeks out. And then when I came back, I was probably about 5 weeks or 4 weeks out. So it meant that I hadn't actually lost any sort of size or any backward step in my physique. So that worked really, really well. So that is something that I would definitely really consider. If you can train during, train, but if you need to take the time off, then take the time off as well, and just recognize that you're going to be resting physiologically and psychologically.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're a better man than most training in Ibiza, especially with some of the sessions you can get on out there. But yeah, that's a very interesting point because we've obviously just been skiing and I had a different approach. So up to that point, I think we'd been dieting for 8, 9 weeks maybe. So it wasn't to the point where I needed a deload, but the gym facility there, I wasn't sure on what was available. But then also when we got there, we very quickly realised that skiing was very demanding on your muscular system, your nervous system. Sorry, my brain just wasn't acknowledging what I was trying to say. And by the end of the day, the last thing you want to do is go and train. So I think for me, it was just keeping active through that method of skiing and getting plenty of steps in through that, and then being more conscious of making my decisions with other things. So I think prior to the event, as I mentioned, I decided I wasn't going to drink alcohol, and a big thing for this is actually communicating your goal. So when people found out I wasn't drinking alcohol, luckily we went skiing with a lot of people that were very chilled. They didn't really care, and they also understood my perspective from it. So they asked like, why wasn't I drinking? I gave them X, Y, and Z reason. I've got this photo shoot, whatever, and they were just like, okay, that's cool, and nothing else was said about it. And I think I made that decision based on what my goal was. I know I've got a deadline for the photo shoot. I know that if I do something that's going to hinder that, then it's going to make my life harder closer to that deadline. So if I can make better decisions now to then make my life easier later down the road, then I'm going to do that. And obviously being away in a different country, skiing, food options were limited. We were obviously cooking food where we can, breakfast and dinner, but then lunch, it was just a kind of free-for-all, see what you've got available. So I was just making better decisions where possible. Don't get me wrong, I still overconsumed a couple of days, but with the amount of activity we were doing through skiing, it was kind of negated by that, so it wasn't really an issue. And yeah, it's just kind of doing what you can with what you've got. If you can train, absolutely do so, but if you can't, then just try to stay active where you can. Communicate your goal with the people that you're going with, and if they're not supportive of it, then that's fine. It's your goal, it's not theirs, and you can't expect them to have the same thought process as you. And yeah, I feel like we've covered like calorie dense foods. As I said, like skiing, a foreign country, lots of meats, cheeses, bread, lots of delicious foods, and there was a lot of snacks around as well, and they were very difficult to control those temptations. But I knew I had this deadline in mind, and I've got X amount of weeks until that point. So I think it comes down to you as a person and your ability to make those decisions. But if you're confident with your choices and you stick with it, then chances are people are going to forget about it. You're going to do your own thing, and you're just going to have a better time overall.
Yeah, I'd say you did really, really well at skiing, mate. To be able to stay on the straight and narrow, and everyone was really supportive of you. You was obviously getting up early. You was doing your cardio as well prior to like hopping in the sauna. So you definitely managed it better than you said there as well. You might not have been able to train, but you definitely made some really, really good decisions. And also say just on the
Yeah,
point about if your mates don't support you on it, then they're just shit mates. We'll just say it as it
yeah,
is. And yeah, if they can't see the overall goal that you're working towards, and they're not supportive of that, and they want to try and peer pressure you into drinking or that sort of stuff, that's pretty immature of them. And I'll just say they're shit mates. So I would stop hanging out with them. Find yourself some new mates that actually give a shit about you and your goals. Yeah, I
exactly.
would
You
also
are the
say
average.
that. Oh, go on, Charlie.
Sorry, mate. I was just going to say you are the average of the five people you surround yourself with. So if your mates aren't supporting your goals, then you need some new mates and probably go it alone for the time being.
Completely agree. What I would say as well is just touching on alcohol. So this is, I'm kind of, I guess my stance on it, and I'm a bit of a staunch natural bodybuilder. I'm not really into drinking, so therefore I don't really get much joy out of alcohol. I definitely think the first beer for me is the best beer. The second beer is probably like 50% as good, and certainly by the third or fourth, you're pretty much gone. And to be honest, I'd avoid beers completely because they are ludicrously calorie dense. You're looking at basically a small meal per pint of beer. It's like 300 calories. So depending on the beer, and same for cider as well. So try and stick to, if you are going to consume alcohol, and that's to your decision. I wouldn't advise it if you're very close to something like a photo shoot or like a specific external like deadline that you've got. But if you don't have an external deadline. So, for example, in my situation, I'm trying to lose weight. Well, I am losing weight. I'm not trying. Let's just be clear about that. Because I'm not one of those people who just says, "Oh, I'm trying to lose weight and can't lose weight." Actually, just go and do it. So I am losing weight, but I don't have a specific deadline on it that I'm working towards. So therefore, I can be a little bit more relaxed when it comes to alcohol consumption. I'm loosely working towards the deadline of summer. So yeah, that's a little way away from here. We're filming this at the start of spring, so yeah, I would consider not consuming alcohol. If you do consume alcohol, go for like spirits and low calorie mixes. That's always, 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 always my advice to my clients. They always come to me and say, "Oh, what can I drink?" Try and avoid things like wine. Wine's very high in calories as well, and beer and cider is very high. So you're looking at your vodka diet cokes, your vodka diet Red Bulls. Vodka in general is just great. Gin's good as well as a spirit. So just be very careful to make those choices because those are going to be the lower calorie options. The other side to that is with alcohol, it definitely, definitely, definitely impacts your sleep negatively. There's plenty of studies on that. You'll know it from your own experience. That can then impact on your training performance, which is really serious as well. And therefore, that can elongate the period of post event when you're trying to recover from that event. So, it is something that if you do consume it, my recommendation would be to consume it in moderation. If you want to go crazy, but just be aware of the consequences. Your performance will drop in the gym, and you probably will regret that once you see that performance drop. Certainly, I would anyway in my situation.
Yeah, 100%. It's quite interesting what you said about the first beer being the best. I'm sure, I think it was Chris Williamson on the Modern Wisdom podcast. He said that when you're going on a night out, the prees is the best part, and then you go on a night out, and it just kind of drastically drops from there, and then to the point, the end of the night out, you're ready to crawl into bed and just give up, really. So, yeah, enjoy the first beer, but especially what Jason said about choosing better options with your alcohol. So the beers, the ciders, the wines, yeah, they might taste nice, but in terms of sticking to your goals, you can definitely do better to make those better decisions. Like my personal favorite recently is vodka lime and soda. It tastes nice and it's relatively low calorie, but alternatively, vodka diet sodas, they're the best route to go, and that's probably the route I'm going to take tomorrow with the event that we're going to, just because it's easy and chances are you're going to get drunk easier on those as well.
Excellent. So now we come to the post event. So this can be if you've worked really hard in the pre and you've worked really hard during the event to stay on track and to plan properly and to make sure your execution's there, then the post can be a very seamless transition into getting yourself back to your routine, minimal impact on your previous performance in the gym, and it's almost like nothing ever happened. However, it's also worth bearing in mind that if we didn't prepare, and then during, if we consumed shit tons of alcohol and really calorie dense foods, and we didn't sleep and we partied and had a massive bender, then post event is going to be very, very poor performance. And then it becomes about how do we manage that performance psychologically, because you can be very demotivated and it can lead towards a negative downward spiral, or if you're aware that that's going to happen and you accept the fact your consequence, your actions have consequences and they're going to impact your performance, then what we can achieve is a positive coping response, because we know that we will get back to where we were before. It's just going to take us a little bit longer. So therefore, that's the way you need to approach it. Is okay, my performance has stepped back because I've drunk too much alcohol, I've hardly slept, etc. But actually, I know that I haven't lost any muscle mass if it's been like less than a week or two, maybe like up to 10 days or so. If you haven't trained, you haven't suddenly shrunk. Glycogen stores might be a little bit depleted all over the place, and you might have lost a little bit of coordination, but that'll all come back very quickly. You've not lost a ludicrous amount of muscle, so you just need to get straight back into your sessions, get straight back to the training program, accept the fact that your performance isn't going to be as good, but that still means that you can get your sessions in, execute your exercises, and then you need to keep aiming and striving to get back to your previous performance. So hopefully you would be recording your workout in the logbook anyway, or some form of app, so that you know what your previous performance was. Talked about that previously on the podcast. I really hope everyone who's listening already does that, because that is number one to measuring your performance. And then you can see, okay, previously I might have benched 100 kilos for 7 or 8 reps. That was what my previous sort of PB, and I need to work back towards that. So, you've got that information already there. You've got your goal. You've achieved it. You've got confidence in that. So now you need to kind of build back up to that event, or build back up to that weight again after the event, sorry.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is quite relevant for me now, because we've obviously just got back from skiing a couple of weeks ago. My first sessions back, most of my lifts dropped off, just from a coordination perspective, but also just psychologically I wasn't there. But now this week is my second week of training post skiing, and I've progressed on a lot of exercises from where I was pre-skiing, but then also I've maintained a lot of other lifts that were there prior. So although last week's sessions weren't the best, I knew that this week I was going to have that neurological firing essentially, and it made it a lot easier to get back into this week's session. So just because you've had that week off, that night off, whatever it is, doesn't mean you can't then get straight back into it as soon as you can. We've obviously front loaded our sessions for this week, and I've now got Friday, Saturday, Sunday as days off to rest and recover and just do what I can to help myself be in the best possible position come Monday morning, and I can then get my cardio done. I can get my training sessions in without it being too much of an issue. But yeah, absolutely, if you need to take rest, just do so. It's not going to do you any harm. And if you go from the point of you can't get out of bed and you then go and train, it's probably going to be an unproductive session, because you're going to feel weak, you're going to feel tired, potentially a little bit sick, and it's just going to be a very mediocre session, which is then going to negatively affect you psychologically, and then you're going to be like, what's the point for the rest of the session? So if you have to, take the rest, but don't hesitate to get straight back into it as soon as you can. And just on the topic of that positive coping response, if you've done what you can pre and during the event, then it can absolutely be easier to get back to it. But if you've had like a week off for a holiday, you've consumed whatever the fuck you want, you've eaten every single food item that's put in front of you, you've overconsumed on alcohol, and you've just been a bit lazy, generally I find there's a rule for this. If it's been, it generally takes like a week. Bear with me, I've got myself muddled up there. It takes like double the amount of time that you've taken off to then get back to it. If you've taken a day off, it's probably going to take you 2 days to get back to it. If you've taken a week off, it's probably going to take you 2 weeks to get back to where you were. So both from a scale perspective, but then also from a training performance perspective as well. So just get back to your nutrition as soon as you can. Training might take a hit short term, but then long term you should be back to normal in no time.
It's really interesting that you say that, to be fair, because I've not heard that before, but actually that makes a lot of sense. I'd certainly say from my previous experience that yeah, when I've gone harder, it definitely elongates that time to return back to my previous performance. So I haven't really thought about it as like double the length of the time that I was actually going hard for, but definitely makes a lot of sense. So something that I will take away and probably feedback to my clients as well. Yeah, I would say that pretty much from my side wraps it up from a post event sort of management. I'd say, to be honest, if you can focus on the pre and the during, those are the two most important ones, and then that makes the post a lot easier. It's fairly straightforward in terms of the post, as long as you've nailed it previously. And if you haven't nailed it previously, then you just need to get straight back on the horse as soon as you possibly can, and then move forward, really.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, if you haven't done that, that's fine. I've currently got a few clients who are on holiday. One's in Amsterdam, one's in Cyprus. I think one's going to Portugal this weekend. And I've advised them as best I can on food choices, getting activity in where you can, and just doing the best you can with the advice we've just given you. But then I've also said to them, like, enjoy the holiday because it's a holiday at the end of the day. So there is ways that you can make it easier by getting more activity in, making those better food choices, but then also not beating yourself up if you come back and you're heavier. Because as I just said, it's probably going to take double the amount of time to get back to where you were. And realistically, this is a long-term thing that you're looking for. You're not looking for that quick fix, because if you are, it's not going to work. We already know this. And if you're in it for the long term, you know that 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the line, you're going to be back to where you were previously. So it's not the end of the world, but there is definitely ways that you can make it easier so that you have less work to do in the long term. But yeah, I think from my perspective, we've covered quite a lot there. So yeah,
Yeah, I've just got one thing that I'd just like to add on to that. To be fair, what I would consider is, all the topics that we've covered there, is you've got the opportunity. I think Charlie kind of touched on it in terms of like a long term approach to physique development and fitness and getting yourself in the gym, but also experiment. Experiment with different techniques, different approaches, with how you handle a pre-event. So experiment with maybe squeezing all your sessions in prior. Maybe experiment with during the session having some alcohol, limiting alcohol completely, and then you can reflect on that and see what worked for me, because each person will have their own individual responses based on their own individual goals. So, for example, we could be telling someone to limit alcohol, make sure you don't consume anything, and then you'll perform better in the gym. But actually, to them, they might be going on their honeymoon or some really important life event, which actually, when they consider their fitness goals in comparison with their overall life goals, that they might actually think, well, maybe I will have that extra drink, because that means that I get to enjoy myself a little bit more and spend time with my partner, and I'm off on my holobobs in the Bahamas or wherever. I nearly said the bananas there. That would have been impressive, wouldn't it? But yeah, so it's really important that we take this into context with our clients' individual goals and your individual goals and what's important to you. Experiment, see what works for you, reflect on it, and then you'll be able to make better decisions going forward and find what works for you.
yeah, definitely. And I think a big take home from that is everyone's individual. I feel like it could be made easier if you're a coach, because they're going to understand you, they're going to understand your needs, your wants, and what you could benefit from. So if it's just a lads' weekend away, and it's not going to add any benefit to your life, then maybe take it a bit easier. But if it is a wedding or a birthday or a family holiday and you haven't seen half your family for 6, 12 months, then maybe relax a little bit and enjoy the experience. But yeah, it's very individual. So it is just a case of experimenting. Maybe this holiday you try one thing, it doesn't quite work, and you do gain a bit of weight. That's fine. The next time you go on a night out, the next time you go on a holiday, you can then try something else, and just making it more specific to you. Because everything we've just covered is going to be different for everyone. Like Jason said, he trained while he was in Ibiza. I didn't train while we were skiing. Obviously, I did some things in terms of cardio and activity, but then you can still do other things like making those better decisions with food, or limiting your alcohol consumption, and just doing what you can that's best for you in that moment.
Completely agree. Cool. We'll wrap that one there. Appreciate it's a slightly shorter episode than usual, but hopefully you've got a lot of value from that. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share it with your nan, share it with your mum, share it with your dad, share it with your dog, and maybe your kitty. But yeah, most importantly, share it with your best mate.
Exactly. And peace and love. Good night.
Peace.